Welcome back to Session 0, where I discuss Dungeon World every week. This month I want to talk about the basic moves in Dungeon World, starting with the two combat options, Hack and Slash and Volley. Before covering the specific moves, I want to cover the basic anatomy of a player move for any non-Dungeon World players who may have stumbled upon this video. I'm going to include this segment in all 4 of my videos on basic moves, so feel free to skip ahead to this timestamp if you're familiar with it, but listen to it at least once if you don't mind. Some player moves just provide a benefit, like the Fighter's Iron Hide, which simply states you gain +1 armor. Many provide a trigger and a benefit. The Paladin's Perfect Knight reads, when you quest, the trigger, choose 3 boons instead of 2, the benefit. Others, including all of the basic moves, have a specific trigger, call for a die roll, and provide a range of results. The trigger is simple to understand, when you do something specific in the fiction. This is meant to promote leading with fiction, because you trigger the rest of the move by stating your fictional action. A player will know which move they're planning to trigger, but everyone at the table should be listening for when triggers apply. That said, in my experience as a player and a game master, and someone who listens to and watches Dungeon World actual plays, a lot of the time players will simply say, I want to discern realities, or I want to hack and slash. This is something I fought hard against when I started GMing for Dungeon World, but really it's fine. Just remember to ask something like, what does that look like, before any dice are rolled. Next is the call for a die roll with roll plus mod. Roll plus mod means roll 2d6, add them together, and add the appropriate modifier. STR, Dex, Con, Int, Wiz, or Cha. The move will tell you which one to add. Occasionally there will be a different modifier, such as in the Aid or Interfere move. Finally, there are typically 3 result ranges. If your roll result was 10 or higher, you do the thing with little trouble. Some moves add a 12 plus range for a greater result. If your roll result was between 7 and 9, which statistically is where most of your rolls are going to land, you'll do it, but with complications or trouble. As a player in GM, this is my favorite range because you often get a choice to make. If you roll a 6 or less, the GM says what happens and you mark XP. Gaining XP for rolling poorly is interesting because it represents learning from failure. However, I've been at tables where players make their primary stat their dump stat specifically so they can level up more quickly, and I personally don't think that's much fun. Also, the GM says what happens does not necessarily mean failure. It literally means the GM says what happens. This could lead to moments that maybe not even be possible in traditional games. The GM can say, you step heavily on a creaky floorboard and hear someone on the floor below yell out, what was that? What do you do? But the GM can say, you do the thing, and 4 guards rush in, what do you do? Most of the time, 6- roll should be a straight out failure, but it doesn't have to be. The GM has the authority to make the 6- result as cinematic as they wish. Now let's look at Hack and Slash, the first of 8 basic moves in Dungeon World, the one used for melee combat. When you attack an enemy in melee, emphasis on melee, roll plus STR. That trigger, when you attack an enemy in melee, means that the foe your character is attacking is ready for said attack and participates in the melee. If the foe is bound, asleep, or otherwise unprepared to take an attack, Hack and Slash doesn't trigger. You simply render that foe unconscious, whether permanently or for some shorter duration. This is an important distinction. If a character successfully sneaks up behind a foe, typically by rolling Defy Danger to do so, which I'll discuss in a future video, they just knock that foe out, or worse, without rolling Hack and Slash or damage. And while this trigger says attack an enemy, depending on the situation and the fiction you use to describe the attack, you may be able to do damage to more than one foe at a time. I said earlier that the 7 to 9 result of a move is my favorite because you're given a choice, but Hack and Slash offers you a 10 plus choice instead. On 10 plus, you deal your damage to an enemy and avoid their attack. At your option, you may choose to do 1d6 damage but expose yourself to the enemy attack. While character hit points start and stay low in Dungeon World, there's still a resource if you choose to use them as such. On 7 to 9, you deal your damage to an enemy, and the enemy makes an attack against you. I think this is boring and can lead to a loop of trading blows, especially since statistically, you're most likely to hit in this range. I fudge this a little bit in my own games. I change, and the enemy makes an attack against you, to, and the enemy makes a move. This lets that enemy do something like retreat, call in reinforcements, etc. There are several things which can alter how this move behaves as well. For example, a weapon with the precise tag allows you to use Dex instead of STR. The messy tag on a weapon behaves like you'd expect. It deals damage in a destructive and, well, messy fashion. Forceful is another tag which affects the fiction. It can knock someone backwards or off their feet. Finally, weapons usually have range tags as well. Hand, close, reach, near, and far. While this is somewhat abstract, keep range in mind when you're describing the situation to your players. A character which is 10 yards away from a foe can't use a hand weapon to hack and slash that foe. So that's the melee attack move. Now let's look at the ranged version. Volley states, when you take aim and shoot an enemy at range, roll plus dex. Again, the trigger is specific. Take aim and shoot an enemy at range. So this isn't a snapshot, you need to take aim. It does not say an unengaged enemy, so you can shoot at an enemy locked in melee with one of your allies, potentially at their peril of course. On 10 plus you have a clear shot, deal your damage. On 7 to 9 choose one, whichever you choose deal your damage. Option 1, you have to move to get the shot, placing yourself in danger as described by the GM. Placing yourself in danger to get the shot is fun and changes the fiction. Danger here doesn't need to be terrible danger, it only needs to be something impending which allows the GM to follow up with, what do you do? Option 2, you have to take what you can get, minus 1d6 damage. This is the safe but boring option in my opinion. The only complication here is that you give yourself a 43.75% chance of not dealing any damage. It can still look cinematic though, so don't discount it as an option. Option 3, you have to take several shots, reducing your ammo by 1. Reducing your ammo by 1 is interesting, although not immediately so. Arrows are abstracted in Dungeon World to the point that a bundle of them is 3 ammo. This can be gamed by always finding ways to replenish your arrows, but running out completely is very cinematic. Sarah Connor runs out of ammo when just one more shot would send the T-1000 into the Molten Steel in Terminator 2. Hawkeye shoots a ton of arrows in the Avengers and only runs out when it's cinematically appropriate. Someone playing a character who uses ammo, typically the Ranger, should be aware that ammo is fair game as a resource the GM can use up. One shouldn't treat a lack of ammo as a negative though. Rather, treat it as an opportunity to reach for an arrow that isn't there, then say something impressive and pull out your sword. As a special note to GMs who have a player running a Ranger, you can be a fan of them by placing a rapier in their path. A rapier has the precise tag, meaning they can use their dex to wield it just like their bow. If they defeat a bad guy with a unique and easily identifiable rapier, it could lead to some fun complications down the road. So those are the basic moves for melee and ranged attacks. Over the next 3 weeks, I'll cover the final 6 basic moves, but not in the order presented in the Dungeon World rulebook. Next week will be Spout Lore and Discern Realities, and the following week I'll cover Defend and Parlay. The final week of January, I'll look at Aid or Interfere and Defy Danger. Those use differing modifiers to the roll. Let me know your comments about today's moves in the comments below, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.